here in studio. Merav, I'd love your take on police calling this intentional but not terror-related.
Not only the police, but Mayor Bill de Blasio also coming out and echoing that same sentiment that New York is not under a terror threat, that this was intentional, but it was not connected to terror. Now, a lot of people have taken to social media to criticize the mayor and the police department, saying, well, you know, if it's intentional, that's terrorizing people, so why is it not terror? A lot of also pro-Trump supporters have come out and said, you know, the Muslim ban, this, even though there isn't much information about who was the perpetrator and who carried out this intentional attack, as they're calling it, a lot of people are already echoing sentiments that Donald Trump has mentioned previously and saying, we need to have this, we need Donald Trump, and he also capitalized on it yesterday evening.
And Shai, why do you think they're refraining from calling this terror and what seems to look like terror?
They may not have definitive proof, and they may not want to go that way. They may not want to create panic. But I think if we take a look at what we do know, I'm talking about the media in general, the public, there are some worrying signs here regarding the profile of this incident. Let's name a few things. 2 improvised devices, not just one, found a few blocks from each other. You're talking about one pressure cooker, the one that did not explode, found with wires attached to it, as well as a cellular device.
And that's specifically for Americans reminiscent of the Boston Marathon bombing.
Right. The target did not seem to be specific. It seems to have been an intention to do random harm. Also interesting to note, it wasn't a major explosive. You're talking about around 29 people injured, if I'm not mistaken. So perhaps some sort of private initiative, not necessarily a major explosive in terms, and that really sort of fits the profile of those lone wolf attacks that we've seen, particularly in Israel. In the attacks that we've seen in Europe, we have been talking about major, more damaging explosives that have been typically able to cause a lot of deaths. But this, for example, is quite reminiscent of the attack we saw a few months ago on a bus in Jerusalem, also an improvised explosive device, injured, of course, around 20 people.
Which, of course, in Israel is clearly called terror.
Right. Well, they were quickly also able to pick up on the signs and their organizers and the people who carried it out. We don't know exactly how far along they are with this investigation. There's one report noting a certain note found on one of the explosives. We don't know what said on that note. We don't know if the police have some sort of information that prevents them from calling it terrorism at this point. I would say there are some worrying signs from what we do know.
And it does seem that police is keeping information from the public. Why do you think this is?
Well, I think 2 major issues, but the one event that stands out of why the police isn't really trying to make a big deal out of it, we are coming at the United Nations General Assembly meetings, and the mayor does not want to scare not only the residents of Manhattan and the city, but also all the foreign dignitaries that will be arriving, if not already arrived, in the city. This is a yearly event that New York takes it very seriously in hosting the city, and it takes pride in keeping security and keeping everyone safe. And even though, for those who know Manhattan and know New York City, this is a little bit far from where the UN building is. The UN building is on 1st and 44th on the east side. This happens on Lower Manhattan on the west side. But regardless, I think a week before, if not even more, we would see lots of security in New York City, and probably if we're only assuming here, we're speculating that this is either a terrorist attack or some kind of event that intention to sabotage and terrorize. But at the same time, I think it's a little bit premature to speculate at this point, because we don't really know the facts right now.
Indeed, and we will have to wait and see what the investigation does release. However, this will, of course, play into the election. Let's hear what both candidates had to say in reaction to yesterday's attacks.
We need to do everything we can to support our first responders, also to pray for the victims. We have to let this investigation unfold. We've been in touch with various officials, including the mayor's office in New York, to learn what they are discovering as they conduct this investigation.
I must tell you that just before I got off the plane, a bomb went off in New York, and nobody knows exactly what's going on. But boy, we are living in a time. We better get very tough, folks. We better get very, very tough. So we'll find out, but it's a terrible thing that's going on in our world and in our country, and we are going to get tough and smart and vigilant.
Now, how, Merav, will this influence the election? Of course, these always tip the scale and public opinion very quickly.
And the closer we get to election time, the more people will remember it on election day. Now, we spoke a lot about this after the Pulse nightclub attack, and how much will people actually remember, and how much will gun rights play into the elections?
Which
and
now,
and
no
ultimately,
really
and a lot of people actually today,
a
lot of people today were saying, well, Hillary, gun rights didn't actually cause today's explosion, and that's why these are Trump supporters saying that's not going to be enough for you to argue towards gun rights. You have to take a harsher stance on terrorism. Now, again, no one's calling this terrorism yet, but the Trump supporters are celebrating off of this. And Trump, as you saw, comes off a plane, doesn't have much information, and announces a bomb went off in New York, and already taken a stance as we have to be stronger, we have to be tougher, and the crowd is loving it. Now, how much will this play in on November 8th? What will happen for November 8th? We don't know. This has been one of the most unexpected elections that we can remember in recent history, with anything that can happen has happened, and anything that can come out of these candidates' mouths has. There's nothing that's leaving us unsurprised so far, and I think that it will depend on what happens in the next 6 weeks before election Day, whether or not this is remembered or something else happens that eclipses this. And voters, as Owen Alterman has said in the past, are very quick to forget if something else comes along.
Indeed, they are. And with the debate coming up in 8 days, that will also, of course, have a major influence. Mohammed, do you think that any terror attack on U.S. soil will only play to Trump's advantage?
I believe so. I think these kind of events play to his advantage, and I think he uses scare tactics to attract followers, more and more of them, by telling them this is a bomb, by telling them I only have the solution to it, and be careful of the others, the unknown. We've talked about this following the Orlando attack, and we said if more and more of these events, these attacks take place, they will benefit. Unfortunately, these attacks happen, but they will benefit Trump over Hillary Clinton, because Hillary uses more of, she's more of a more logical, rational. She comes across as, well, let's keep things, calm, and try to approach it in a very logical way.
But less emotional, and
less,
some people
less
will
emotional,
say less from the heart.
and less drama involved in it. And just like we've seen in his statement now, that it's a bomb and I only have the solution, and that's what it is. It's a scare tactic that caters to certain slice of the society.
You can see the differences just in those statements. Hillary talking about it calmly, solemnly on the plane in front of reporters, whereas Trump went in front of a group of people and announced, well, look at what's happening and what am I going to do about it?
Indeed, a kind of a microcosm of the election itself and their different tactics.
I won't say anything again until I find out more, and taking the more, conservative, I guess, approach to it as a candidate, and not going out with these grand statements.
Saying it's a bomb, it's terror, follow me for security. Merav, Savir, I want to thank you very much at this point. Mohammed, Shai, you're both staying with me as we move along.